In Washington, D.C. this week, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met President Donald Trump at the White House, joined by a whole plethora of European leaders. This comes just after Trump's disastrous meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. And the headline? Get Trump back on the side of the angels. Talk of real security guarantees for Ukraine, a proposed trilateral meeting with Putin, and fresh questions as to the nature of any potential ceasefire deal. And meanwhile, inside Ukraine, Russia kept striking energy and civilian targets, or to unsanitize it, it kept killing. But let's break down what actually happened in DC and what each side wants. I am Theo Althorpe-Mullis, and this is Dictators v. Democrats, where we track the global war against democracy, freedom, and human rights. If you like this work and care about all of those good things, then please do like, share, subscribe, and hit the little bell thing for more. With that said, let's get into it. So, Monday, 18th of August, President Zelenskyy and Trump meet at the White House, joined by pretty much every top European leader. A show of unity that the administration billed as historic to push to an end to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. The meeting, of course, followed Trump's earlier encounter with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. That set the stage for the summit. A video released by the White House captured the multilateral session and the leaders' photo call. This was unusually broad. So many leaders at the same time in the White House, that is historic. Zelenskyy described the day as a major step forward, and Trump has struck an optimistic tone about pursuing a ceasefire, although he has later said that he doesn't think that Russia wants a deal. But there has been some progress on real security guarantees for Kyiv. Specifics are thin on the ground and nothing legally binding was signed, but analysts, correspondents, and hacks like myself stressing how much now depends on whether Moscow engages and what the guarantees actually mean in practice. Well, let's have a look at what was floated. Number one, of course, security guarantees for Ukraine. Trump and European leaders discussed a framework to backstop Ukraine's defense. Reporting points to a large US weapons package, around $90 billion, financed by the Europeans. Trump is not giving anything away. And Zelenskyy welcomed the idea. European leaders emphasized that any guarantees must be credible and sustained. Timelines, delivery schedules, and enforcement, they remain open. Secondly, a possible Trump-Zelenskyy-Putin meeting, a trilat. The White House has been pushing the idea for some time, and Zelenskyy has always said yes. They're aiming for this meeting within weeks, and venues have been floated, include Budapest in Hungary and Geneva, Switzerland. The Kremlin hasn't confirmed, and it's avoided any face-to-face meetings between the leaders in the past, and it said that any such summit would require careful preparation. Well, Putin is probably a bit afraid of meeting Zelenskyy in the face. And Geneva's been mentioned partly because the legal questions tied to Putin's arrest warrant from the ICC. There's movements on essentially talks about more talks, but no talks agreed yet. And the US military posture, and Trump's ruled out sending US ground troops to Ukraine, but crucially has signaled openness to other forms of support, including air elements. Few specifics. There will be a lot of questions asked because the US Air Force is a force like no other in the world at the moment. The B-2, the F-35, they've been proven in Iran to be essentially immune to S-300 Russian air defense missiles. And the US Air Force could destroy enormous numbers of Russian troops in Ukraine. And if European troops were to go to Ukraine to act as peacekeepers with the US Air Force as support and logistics, well, then Russia could not break through again. And that would be a real security guarantee. Now, as for Europe's line, European leaders, they recognize that this war is in Europe and press for robust guarantees, stressing that any ceasefire cannot reward aggression. Some tension was visible around sequencing. Paris and Berlin leaned into the ceasefire first, and Washington focused on guarantees as leverage towards talks. So, who was in the room when it happened? Well, obviously, Zelensky and Trump, but also Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom, President Emmanuel Macron of France, Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy, President Alexander Stubb of Finland, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and finally, last but not least, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Obviously, Trump's cabinet was also in the room, including Witness Witkoff and J.D. Vance, who was quiet. The choreography was key as well. Family photos, extended bilateral talks, all designed to show Europe buying into this US-less push. And the optics matters. Unity. Ukraine needs both sustained weapons flows and a united political front to deter Russia from stalling or probing for divisions. And what does Kyiv want out of this? Well, priorities are clear. Long-range munitions, air defense, resupply, and guarantees that will outlast any American election cycle and outlast Trump changing his mind again. Zelensky's message in Washington: security guarantees must cover the whole European security architecture, not just a one-off package. Kyiv also wants any ceasefire to be tied into verifiable Russian pullbacks and mechanisms that prevent Russia from attacking again. The key mechanism there would be European troops in Ukraine as a tripwire force with the backing of the USAF. And what does Washington want? The Trump administration is chasing a diplomatic breakthrough, ideally through a ceasefire framework without committing US ground forces, while pushing for Europe to bankroll and sustain the heavy lift on arms and reconstruction. This is something that Trump has been pushing, and frankly, almost every American administration within the last 20 years has been pushing for Europe to do, to take its own defense seriously again. It's also testing the prospect of a trilateral, can pressure Moscow to pause its strikes, or at least to stop its strikes. And the White House emphasized breakthroughs in messaging after the summit, but substance will be whether deliveries accelerate and whether Moscow is actually willing to sit down and talk seriously instead of repeating maximalist talks and emphasizing the history of 500 years ago or more. As for Europe, well, this is existential. They need to stabilize Ukraine. They need to deter Russia. They need to ensure energy and grain security. I mean, grain security, that's essential for swathes of the world. Ukraine is the breadbasket for many countries that rely on Ukrainian grain. European leaders signaled willingness to finance this large package, this 90 billion, on conditions and visibility on delivery. American packages have, in the past, been big on promises and small on the heavy metal that actually gets to Ukraine. And they also underscored sanctions pressure. Sanctions are key. Russia's economy is hurting, and any lifting of sanctions at this crucial moment will enable them to continue their war. Because they want to continue it, they need to be dissuaded against that. They also warned against taking any assurances from Putin at face value without concrete steps. The old Cold War, trust but verify. What is Moscow signaling? Well, it came to Alaska with the usual maximalist nonsense. Lavrov wore a t-shirt with CCCP or USSR written on it, and if that isn't an imperialist dog whistle, then I don't know what is. And Kremlin statements have been non-committal, cautious, focused on careful preparation for any leader-level engagement. This is the usual from them. They don't want this meeting. They are playing along, hoping to stall for as much time as they can. Because if they can stall and if they can get Trump to lift sanctions or push the Europeans to lift sanctions or break up the Western alliance, then they think they can win. In the meantime, what's been happening in Ukraine? Well, while this meeting was taking place, Russia launched one of its heaviest overnight barrages recently. Hundreds of Shahed-type drones. They're awful. They've been under Shahed fire. Terrible whining noise that you hear. And the Doppler effect of it going over you. And you never know quite when it's going to fall out of the sky. And Iskander ballistic missiles hitting multiple oblasts and energy infrastructure in Ukraine. Ukraine's Air Force said it downed around 88 decoys and drones, but strikes caused deaths and damage, including in Zaporizhia, Sumy, Odessa, Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Dnipropetrovsk, and around Kyiv. Regional officials reported multiple civilians killed and injured, and this is the reality. Russia will continue to kill for as long as they're allowed. For a baseline on the broader war picture, Russia advances very slowly and at enormous cost in lives. The recent small breakthrough near Pokrovsk was cut off and is being destroyed by Azov. Ukrainian forces have managed to advance near Sumy, but the overall picture is stalemate. So, what was agreed in the talks? What actually was delivered? Well, obviously, no final peace deal. That's obvious. What was agreed is political momentum, verbal US commitment to build security guarantees, European willingness to fund large multi-year arms programs, and active exploration over a trilateral with Putin. All conditional, vague, but it's more than we've had, frankly, ever before. And the test will be concrete timelines for deliveries of weapons, written security guarantees, frameworks, and whether Moscow can be persuaded or forced to stop. And what are the unknowns and risks? Enforcement, what deters Russia from violating a ceasefire? Without a NATO-style Article 5, any security guarantees must have teeth. Automatic resupply, snapback sanctions, in-depth air defense coverage commitments, and really the main thing, European forces on the ground. Russia said this is unacceptable, but frankly, Europe needs to call their bluff. And as for the venue, well, Geneva hosts. How do the organizers square that with Putin's ICC arrest warrant and host state obligations? Budapest is politically feasible, but would Hungary really command trust from all parties? It's a NATO member, it's an EU member, but it is certainly not on the side of the angels here. Maybe wait till next year in the Hungarian elections, which Orban is almost certainly likely to lose. In the military reality, Kyiv needs more air defense. Absolutely. The Patriots that have been promised need to get there, and other systems as well. Gepards, the German cannon-based anti-aircraft system, there is nothing better for shooting down Shahed drones. They need more of them or equivalents to them. They also need deep precision stocks. They need to be able to hit Russian oil infrastructure where it hurts. Of course, Hungary has been complaining about this because it's perfectly happy to buy blood oil, but they need them. Any strike on Russian oil means that Russia can send fewer tanks, fewer weapons to Ukraine because it can't buy them. And Kyiv has just shown off its own cruise missile, the Flamingo, funny name, with a reported 3,000-kilometer range that can hit significant swathes of Russia. But they still need foreign kit. And if deliveries lag, Russia's incentive to stall and continue rises. And that's why Europe's financing and US logistics decisions really matter in the next few days. What to watch coming up? White House and NATO readouts. Look for specifics on guarantees, working groups, and any air component clarifications. European financing. Watch Paris, Berlin, Brussels, probably Norway. They've got the scratch up there in the north. For numbers and timelines tied to this $90 billion package. Europe can pay for it. They've just got to take it on the chin. The Kremlin posture. Are we going to continue seeing this maximalist nonsense about forcing Ukraine to retreat from all of Donbass? Or are we going to see some actual reality, some actual seriousness out of the Russians? And the on-the-ground tempo. Will the war continue to stall, be a stalemate? Who will advance and where? So, where are we to finish? A high-profile summit, the highest profile summit I can think of about this war recently, at least in terms of the numbers of people who were there. A promise of security guarantees, ish, and possible trilaterals, but No ceasefire, no signed frameworks for anything, and no let up in Russian strikes. If guarantees turn into real deliveries with enforcement, Ukraine's position strengthens, and the position of all free people strengthens. If not, Moscow will likely play for time and continue trying to take over Ukraine. Bear in mind the demands that they are asking for now are far different, still maximalist, but far different from the 3 days to take Kyiv, 10 days to take the entire country that they started with in February 2022. Now, I'll keep tracking what's potentially real and what's bluster. You never really know with Trump. And I'll have updates as soon as we get hard details on any guarantees, any packages, and any meetings, any trilateral meetings with Putin. Until then, this has been Dictators v Democrats. I am Theo Althorpe Mullis. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, then please do like, share, subscribe. Did I miss anything out? Did I leave anything out? Do you have anything to add? Please do let me know in the comments below. And always remember that democracy is non-negotiable.